Hey everybody. All right. So for the first question, it says, according to our author, what is the race, and what are at least two different ways it is generally understood? Give specific examples from the real world to support your answer, and be sure to cite your text in your answer. All right. So according to the author, from page 2, race refers to a group of people who share physical and cultural traits as well as common ancestry. And in the real world, when I ask someone to define race, they would most likely say what color a person is, or maybe they would say what country you came from, or something along those lines. Those two are the most common I've heard. All right, for the second question, discuss racial theories and racial ideologies. What are they? What are the differences between the two? So on page 41, Golash Boza states that a racial ideology is a set of principles and ideas that, one, divides people into different racial groups, and two, serves as the interests of one group. So basically, racial theories are explanations for how racism is created and why it still exists. And racial ideologies are ideologies that put people into racial groups. Alright, so for question 3, explain and discuss the differences between institutional, systematic, and structural racism. Again, use examples from the real world and your personal experiences. Alright, so for institutional racism, on page 37, Golash Boza says that institutional racism is the policies, laws, and institutions that reproduce racial inequalities. So, for example, a police officer might believe that black people are more aggressive than white people, therefore, they think they might need to use more physical force on them. Okay, so for systematic, Golash Boza says that systematic racism is a diverse assortment of racist practices, the unjustly gained economic and political power of whites, the continuing resource inequalities, and the white racist ideologies, attitudes, and institutions created to preserve white advantage and power. And the reason that systematic racism exists is because of the history of the United States and their history with slaves and all that. And for structural racism, Golash Boza states that structural racism is different than systematic racism. It differs from it by pointing to an interinstitutional interactions across time and space. So racial inequality in housing leads to inequality in schooling, which turns into inequality on the labor market, and it's basically a never-ending cycle. And it seems like that would also come from the history of the US and segregation and Jim Crow laws and just discrimination in general, which caused like the African Americans to have worse jobs. They couldn't get the best houses or loans and stuff like that back then. So it's still a never ending cycle today. Alright, so for question 4, how does our author argue that colorblind racism works? Okay, our author talks about colorblind racism, which is where a person ignores people of colors. It ignores their needs, experiences and identities, which is from page 45. And he says on there that people say, "Oh, I'm not racist," or they tell racist jokes, and colorblind racism reproduces racial inequality because people can be racist without being labeled as a racist. And that's about it.